In my series on Mohsen Hamid's The Reluctant Fundamentalist, today I'll be talking about chapter 3 and mostly the plot and some aspects of what the characters are doing and Changez's backstory. So let's begin. So in this chapter, our two characters, the protagonist or the narrator, Changez, and his silent American listener, are still at the restaurant in Lahore, close to Anarkali, and Changez is telling him his own story. Now, in the previous chapter, we had ended at that he goes on vacation, takes a trip with his friends, meets Erica, and when he returns, he is ready to move to New York to start his job at Underwood Sampson, which is a valuing firm, a firm that goes and values other companies for their clients so that they can be bought or they can go public. These are the ones who write the reports based on which people are fired or hired. So that's the company that he is in terms of his career. He is at the highest point as a beginner, right? Entering and winning one of the most prestigious internships. They're also told that they will be evaluated every 6 months and rated, and those who stay in the top bracket are the ones who will eventually have a regular job. Now, when he moves to New York, he immediately feels like he is at home. Part of the reason is that he sees himself as accepted. It's a diverse city. There are people who look like him. And of course, he is on an upward trajectory. So at work, Jim, who had hired him, is still the one overseeing their training, and he has Wainwright and others whom he knows. And he starts experiencing, this sort of the rise of someone within the American dream. But most important part, I think, for me in this chapter is his experience of being in New York and then becoming part of a corporate culture, and then eventually learning how to compete and naturally succeeding. What we also learn here is that he basically suggests that his natural politeness or cultural politeness and his cultural heritage kind of becomes an asset to him during this period as he's starting a job, because he is already focused, he's already brilliant, but also he has this extra cultural extra that enables him to do well. Now, they have several types of trainings, and one of them, of course, is the training which is called soft skill training, where they are trained to look at things or perform an identity based on what they think their customers would like to see. So looking at it or behaving in a way that they are anticipating what the customers are accepting. So that kind of gives us what kind of training is given to these people who go elsewhere in the world and do the work of their companies. So by the end of the chapter, we learn that Changez, has been selected as the top candidate, and part of their training is over, and they are invited to Jim's house for a party. And they all go there, and that's where he realizes that what Jim had was the kind of end result of a successful career. He has a nice apartment, a wonderful view, and he leaves us there as he is standing, on the balcony looking at the ocean and thinking about Great Gatsby, right? And maybe at that point, he is seeing himself in Jim's place. But overall, in this chapter, we learn that he is immediately at home in New York. There is a little bit of foreshadowing if you read carefully, because he points out, this is where I fell in love with your country or with New York, but I didn't know it then. that this all will eventually end. We don't know where or how it will end at this point in the book, but it is what technically, if you're a student, you could point to as foreshadowing. You could also point to his relationship with Wainwright. They probably are not friends, but Wainwright obviously understands that this guy is brilliant and he's not threatened by him, but he also sometimes gives him, good advice. And he's honest with him. When Changez tells him that, yeah, I got it, but I was lucky, and he says, luck has nothing to do with it. You're better than us. So overall, in terms of our reading and discussion of the novel, this is the high point in Changez's life. He has started a career. He's successful in it. He likes it. He hasn't been yet sent to an actual job, but he's primed for it, and he looks up to Jim as a role model. Meanwhile, in the present of the story, remember, most chapters start with he talking to the American and then going into the flashback. And then towards the end of the chapter, he comes back to address the American. How quickly they brought those tables to the street, that's where he comes back to the American. And in terms of time and setting, we realize that it's almost evening, but they are still continuing their conversation. Now, also in this chapter, he experiences the first fruits of so-called capitalism, right? He's given a card, which is his expense account, and he's excited about it, and he takes his friend Wainwright to an Indian Pakistani restaurant. So overall, as I read it and discuss it in my classes, this is a chapter which you could, in Freytag's model pyramid of a narrative story, you could see this is the rising action of the novel. We have not reached the climax yet, but this is where the protagonist is on an upward trend. So that's all I have to say about this chapter. Obviously, I missed certain things and I didn't emphasize things that you might think important. Please point those out to me in the comments and I will try to address them. And this is not all. Towards the end, after I've done the chapters, I hope to also record a video where I go to each instance where he addresses the American and see what kind of a composite identity can we construct of the American, still from Changez's point of view, but maybe that will give us a rough idea of as to who the American is or might be. That's all. Thank you so much for your time. I will now see you next time. Until then, peace and love.